Oh, you stupid? Let go.
Some damn space-age material.
Hey, put the flame away.
Y'all are being rude to our only neighbor. Now stop.
You're being...
Come here, bitch. Stand and deliver.
Come here, bitch. Please.
No, don't touch it. Damn, it's a freaking problem.
Damn it, how do I save?
Boom, bang, ba-doo-doom, boo, down, boo, down.
Sometimes your eyes can be dangerous. Make sure that things in you.
Hey, it's me, I'm the Skinamarink.
It's a Friday once again.
Hello, my fellow freaks, and welcome back to the channel. I hope you have all had a splendid week. You saw what today's audience suggestion is, or I guess this week's audience, whatever. The day has come. The day has come where it is finally time for me to review Skinamarink. Well, okay, I have watched and reviewed this before in the past. The only thing is I was doing it on a blog. I had like a blog for a few months to a year before I started this YouTube channel where I was basically doing the same thing, just in a strictly written format. But anyway, I have watched and reviewed Skinamarink before, and well, let me also just formally introduce it. This week we are doing Skinamarink from 2022 and directed by Kyle Edward Ball. And not only did it end up being a viewer recommendation, but I already kind of had it in my mind that I wanted to eventually go back and review it again for the channel. But because our viewer this week, Jose Luis listen, I've been looking at your username a lot. Can I just call you Jose? We've talked about Skinamarink a few times in the comment section of videos, and I kept telling him like one day I will review it. When I did this wheel, I decided to throw it up there as a recommendation because that is how it was introduced to me in the comments. I mean, I have another one in the wheel as well, Martyrs. That's another one that I've already watched. I haven't reviewed it, but I have seen it, and I am, of course, open to talking about that incredible film. But we're not there today. We have Skinamarink recommended to me by Jose Luis Prawn 9987. Thank you so much for the recommendation, and I hope that you end up enjoying this video as well. So to help me write this review, I went back to what some of my initial thoughts of Skinamarink were when I was doing my blog, and it seems like the first time I reviewed this, I wasn't scared of it, and that's definitely changed over time, let me say. And I think that's because very shortly after I finished my like initial review of it, I had a moment where I had to walk around in a silent, dark, really creepy, already kind of haunted house, literally at 3 in the morning to go pee. And the way that house looked at 3 in the morning, it reminded me exactly of Skinamarink. And I couldn't get the stupid toy phone out of my head. And that is when I realized maybe this film is scary. Like maybe this really truly is a scary movie because it has now lingered with me, and I am now experiencing an environment that the children in this film experienced, and I want to pee myself. And then when I first moved into where I am living now, I had a really hard time rewatching it because this is a freaky house. I don't know if this one's haunted or not. I haven't had any activity since when I first moved in. But when I first moved in, goddamn. I take back everything I said about this house. I swear to God I saw something. What was I talking about? Yeah, I couldn't watch Skinamarink when I first moved into this house. My fear was that it would inspire any spirits already living here. Anyway, I'm really excited to get into this review and talk about this incredible film. But first, if you are new here, hi, my name is STARGUTZZZ. Any kind of like running, crashing, or loud noises that you may hear going on in the background, those are my cats. Also, my movie reviews tend to be more of a discussion of elements that I find to be good or bad about a piece, rather than just giving you this big play-by-play of everything that happens. So in other words, I try to refrain from spoilers as much as possible, but they will arise as they pertain to like the discussion I'd like to have with the film. This is the part where I usually tell you where you can find Skinamarink to watch, but first let me tell you a little bit about the director. So Kyle Edward Ball started out on YouTube with like a sort of analog horror series that focused on these very atmospheric environments. I believe his channel is called Bite-Sized Nightmares, unless that's changed over the past few years. I doubt it has. And Skinamarink specifically is inspired by, or it's derived from his short film titled Heck. I'll even provide a card up here for you guys, so you can just click on that and go see what the inspiration or what the starting ground, the groundwork, what the groundwork for Skinamarink was. I watched a few of them. He's obviously a very talented, cinematographer? I don't know. He's good at what he does. He's very incredible at what he does, and I highly recommend checking out his channel. But if you would like to watch Skinamarink before the rest of this review, or if you would like to watch it afterwards, you can actually do so on Tubi. I didn't know this until going into the review. Skinamarink is on Tubi now. The first time I reviewed this, it was still a Shudder exclusive, like it just came to streaming platforms, and it's possible that you can still find it on Shudder, but it's on Tubi. That's incredible. However, let me give you some recommendations for watching Skinamarink. First of all, it's fantastic that it is now free on Tubi, and you know we love and support Tubi here. But I gotta say, unless you have an ad blocker, I don't recommend watching it on Tubi because of the ad placement. The ad placement is really bad. One of the major jump scares in this film has an ad placed directly in the middle of that jump scare happening, and it's like such a big one too. So if you're available to, I would recommend watching Skinamarink in some kind of format without ads. Even though we love Tubi, if Tubi's really the only way you can, obviously love and support Tubi. I'm just letting you know some of their ad placements for Skinamarink suck ass, and they like ruin the vibe. They also, it takes you out of the immersion. This film is best experienced totally immersed with it, which goes with my next recommendation. Watch this with headphones. The best, maybe the only way to really experience Skinamarink is with headphones. There's so much auditory stuff happening that it's not going to translate very well if you're watching it on a television or, as I did, on a projector. No matter how loud you turn it up, it's not gonna do the justice of wearing headphones. So those are just a few of my recommendations before you go out and watch Skinamarink. Now let's get into the rest of this review. Skinamarink follows two children, Kevin and Kaylee, as they wake up in the middle of the night to a silent, dark house and a missing father. It doesn't take long for the night to grow unsettling for the kids as windows and doors pop out of existence. To cope with these strange events, Kevin and Kaylee camp in the living room, using cartoons to drown out the silence and regain some comfort in their now empty and unfamiliar home. I feel like I'm making this sound nice. It gets so dark. The story gets really dark and kind of sadistic, especially as we reach the end. The direction that the narrative takes, it's a little fucked up, kind of very cruel and sad and sadistic, what's happening to these children, and nothing can do the justice of just like watching that happen. Does that make sense? Like, there's really no way to summarize it that's going to have the same effect as you experiencing it firsthand. And I don't really want to share too much details on what's happening in it specifically. There are many videos out there that do that and like explain it fully to you, but I feel like in a way that in itself is a spoiler, because to me, watching Skinamarink, it's so much of like that initial reaction. I wish I could go back and just watch it for the first time again, because just getting to watch these events unfold for yourself, it's I won't say satisfying, but it's more impactful to experience it firsthand than for me like detailing to you what exactly happens. Just know that there is some kind of entity in this house, whether it's like, I think in my initial review I called it a poltergeist, could be a demon, it could be something more symbolic or metaphorical, could be the literal house itself being alive, as we've discussed in other videos. Whatever it is, it starts to gain power, and a lot of the stuff that it does to these children, our protagonists, is cruel. And this is not aided, or maybe it kind of is, by the fact that these kids, these child actors, are able to very convincingly sound like they're in pain. It's like heartbreaking to watch. It is such a like sad and tragic, and like I said, I want to use the word sadistic, because what this entity thing does to them is sadistic. Anyway, that's all I have to share about the synopsis. Let's go right into the main discussion. The very first thing anybody is going to notice about Skinamarink is the very strange and awkward camera angles and camera shots that it decides to use, where the camera is primarily focused on the ceiling or the floor or like corners or hallways. The camera is always focused on anything that is not the main action taking place. And I think already just from that, for most mainstream audiences or most casual moviegoers, that's going to be like a hard pass. I think Skinamarink is like for a very specific kind of audience. The kind of people who are going to like and appreciate Skinamarink are like cinephiles. They're people who consider film as an art form and exploring more experimental storytelling methods, and I doubt not so much like a mainstream generic horror crowd. Does that make sense? And so because of this, I do want to note some of the criticisms that Skinamarink has before I go into the discussion of everything that I like about it, because I do kind of feel like the criticism that people have for it is fair. Like, I see where they're coming from, and I completely acknowledge why someone would hate this film. This is one of those films where I watch it, and even though I love it, I can see it and I'm just like, yeah, I get why a lot of people might hate this. So let's cover why somebody might hate this, or why this isn't a film that everybody is going to understand. And even though this section is clearly going to be pretty negative, that's not a reflection of my opinion. I just think it's fair criticism to point out, because they're not wrong, but I still love the film. And again, it's for like a very specific audience, like a Eraserhead and Rabbits kind of audience. You know, it's not for everyone, I think is the point. So as I already mentioned, the camera work is mostly focused on floors and ceilings and walls and hallways, anything that's not the main action. And to pair with this, the film is also, it's like one of the slowest burns ever. It's a very slow burn. Everything is incredibly quiet. It gets very dark, like visually dark, I mean. And I think it's kind of a recipe to help lull somebody to sleep. Now, I love this movie. When I was rewatching it in bed on my projector, I fell asleep a few times. I love this movie, but it just, I call it, you know what I call it? I call it the Loth Lorraine effect. I love this movie, but there are moments in this where if I'm watching it in like a perfectly comfy setting, I'm falling asleep because it's dark, it's quiet, it's peaceful, it's slow. Sleepy time. And the reason I want to deem it the Loth Lorraine effect is because anytime that I rewatch the first Lord of the Rings movie, there is one moment that I can't control falling asleep. The very first few times I tried watching the movie in general, I couldn't get past this part because I kept falling asleep, because it was dark, it was slow, it was peaceful, it was quiet. And that's when they get to Loth Lorraine. Eventually one day I watched it in the middle of the day with full lights on and was finally able to make it through that part. But listen, even in a movie that we love, there are just moments like that sometimes, you know? So if somebody were to call Skinamarink like boring, it's putting me to sleep, nothing's happening, I hear you. I get it. You're not wrong. And like, even with the very little dialogue that is present, it's whispered. It's so hard to hear. some of the dialogue has subtitles, but not all of it does. And even the pieces of dialogue that don't have subtitles to help you hear what's being said, sometimes that's still like an important piece of the narrative, which is another reason why I think it's so important to watch this with headphones. There's so much that's just like hard to hear. It's so whispered. And then I also especially think, you know, there are some people out there who struggle with media literacy. It happens. It happens. And I think people who struggle with that are really going to struggle understanding what the narrative of Skinamarink even is in the first place. Like, they're not gonna be able to like piece together some of the puzzle pieces to know what's even going on in this thing. That's not, I feel like now that I've said it, that sounds like an insult. I don't mean it to. I'm just saying, like, it's not a straightforward way of storytelling like we're usually used to in a film. And I won't say skill issue, but some people just don't have the skills to navigate that. And you know, that's fine. And really, I think those are some of the biggest issues that casual watchers of either like casual film enjoyers, casual horror movie enjoyers, I think those are some of the like main complaints that could arise from Skinamarink. And fair. It's not for everybody. I don't think Skinamarink is meant to be for everybody. I think it's made for a very specific kind of audience. Definitely an audience who likes analog horror, which is how Ball got his roots. And anyone who's kind of familiar with analog horror is going to watch Skinamarink and they're going to realize, oh, this is geared towards people who like to analyze media, who they like experimental methods of storytelling or artistic methods. They like to dissect and, like I said, analyze what is in front of them and maybe some of the metaphors or deeper meanings to what's happening in the story. And it's told in a very artistic, non-linear fashion, which just makes us nerds foam at the mouth, I guess. And so I feel like what's kind of funny about this is that a lot of the elements that a mainstream or casual audience is going to hate about Skinamarink, they're also all going to be the same elements that the people who like this kind of stuff are going to love about Skinamarink. So I know I've mentioned in a past video before how I've usually feel more disturbed by films that have a very heavy and detailed atmosphere rather than like classic disturbing cinema where they're coming at you with the most extreme gore and violence possible. And I think I might have even said, perhaps it was in the guinea pig review, I can't remember now. I even said that I feel like Skinamarink is more disturbing than anything that we watched this summer, and I still stand by that. Like, I get this disturbed feeling more from like the atmosphere that gets built in the film rather than the just like extreme nightmare kind of content. That's just me. Not everyone's like me, so keep that in mind. And I think the way that Skinamarink specifically does this the most is by feeding on a fear that most, if not all of us had as a kid, which is waking up in the middle of the night to a dark, silent house. Nobody else is awake. It's just you and the dark, silent void of something that should be familiar, but now at 3 a.m. feels very unfamiliar and uncomfortable. I've actually seen quite a few people relate Skinamarink to their like childhood memories. I think Wendigoon is one of them. I'm pretty sure he did a video like when it first came out. And I mean, there are things in Skinamarink that give me my own childhood memories of waking up in the middle of the night to the silent, scary, dark house. There were moments where I accidentally got left at a house alone, and I did what Kevin and Kaylee did, which is like try to use the television for comfort. I think Ball just does this incredible job at somehow recreating this shared memory of what it feels like to wake up in the middle of the night as a kid and everything just being dark and quiet and you're the only one awake. There's even like, I don't know what to call it other than like a noise effect where it's like the camera is staticky, but it's not static. And that fuzzy vision effect that it has is also just so similar to looking into darkness. Do you know, like the effect that our eyes have freshly looking into darkness. And while some may find the constant focus on walls, ceilings, corners, what have you, While some may find that boring in Skinamarink, there are others who actually think that it aids in the horror or the terror that's happening. In a way, it helps to build this very uneasy, unsettling atmosphere. By not lingering on what's actually happening, it causes our imagination to fill in the empty spaces. And often our imagination is more terrifying than what the film could ever show us. I also noticed this time around while watching Skinamarink how the film just gets darker as the narrative progresses. Like, we start out and Kevin and Kaylee have a few methods of light, but then by the end of it, it's like the entire house is just pitch black. There's no light anymore. And I feel like light is a big symbol of comfort and safety for Kevin and Kaylee, which as the entity begins to get more powerful, that comfort and safety is slowly seeped away from them. And so throughout Skinamarink, we slowly watch it get darker and darker until we're basically in pitch black. And speaking of the pitch black void and darkness, one of my favorite effects that Ball is able to manage in this is, how do I even describe it? It's the ability to force the audience's eyes into making things out in the darkness that aren't actually there, or like slowly figuring out what we're looking at. You know, when your eyes are fresh to the darkness and it's like the edges of everything it's very blurry. Some things are maybe even meshed together, and as your eyes are adjusting to the darkness, things start to become more clear. But at first it's like the very blurry, fuzzy lines. So I don't understand how he does it. I really don't, but Ball does an incredible job at replicating just what our eyes naturally do. I don't know, did he like put a camera in his retina? How? And maybe it's something simple. Maybe, again, I am a cave woman, but being able to like very accurately depict what our eyes would be able to see in darkness, or to even like force that upon our eyes to make us do that, or to make our eyes do that. Does that make sense? I think it adds a very like dreadful, terrifying impact on the film, because it feels like we're really looking at these environments. It feels like we're really there in the darkness with Kevin and Kaylee. Now, I think the final shot of this film does this effect the very best, but that's a spoiler, so I can't share that with you. But what I can use as an example is a moment when Kaylee is going upstairs and she goes into her parents' bedroom and the father is sitting on the bed. When I was first re-watching this again, I got to this moment. Why am I saying we like you watched it with me? When I got to this moment, I felt like it truly did take a while for my eyes to adjust to what I was looking at. And then after a while, I realized that we're looking at a person sitting on a bed. And then my memory dinged what scene was about to take place. It's a good scene. But the point here is, it took me a while. It was like my own eyes were trying to adjust in this darkness. All of these blurry shapes and lines slowly becoming more defined as my eyes are adjusting. I don't know how he's able to like do this effect so well, or maybe it is just like simple, but I love it. It's my favorite. It's one of my favorite things in this film. And also, speaking of perspective and how we see the film, have you maybe seen some clips of this and wondered why the camera is so low to the ground? I think another reason why so many people relate Skinamarink to their own childhoods is because it is told and shot from a child's perspective. Our protagonists, Kevin and Kaylee, are children, so it makes complete sense that the camera is working at the perspective and point of view of a child, and that it would take in the environment and the world around it the same way a child would, which is probably mostly looking up or looking like right down at their feet, right? But also the fact that this film is being told through the perspective of a child, it brings in on those memories of being a child, terrified of the dark, terrified of the silence and being alone, of that being like a new experience for you. Especially where it's an experience that you have to experience alone to know that fear. So Skinamarink really like onslaughts those emotions to some of its viewers, the viewers who I guess get it, but also the fact that this film is told from a child's perspective, it just makes it even more depressing. I'm sorry, but it's heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking to watch what the entity like does to these children. The kids are so young and so innocent and so naive, and the entity just like doesn't care. Also, one final note on the atmosphere. Yes, it is pretty Lynchian. I can't leave the review and not tell you that yes, this is like a Lynchian film. I think especially with the audio and the noises that Ball has, like a lot of the humming and static and rumbles and growls. Again, this is why you need to watch it with headphones. I think, yes, of course it's Lynchian in the way it looks, right? But I think more so in its audio, it's very Lynchian. In fact, that's why I like compare it to Rabbits. I feel like the audio in Skinamarink reminds me of the audio in Rabbits. We're doing good, Momo. There are several interpretations and readings that people can gain from watching Skinamarink. Like I said, this is really made for those people who love dissecting and analyzing a piece of media. And there are several branches that you can stretch out to in interpreting the deeper meaning behind Skinamarink, some of which include topics of divorce, abuse, the afterlife, and trauma. I think a quick YouTube search would bring upon just dozens of other creators that are fully going in depth on the analysis behind like deeper meanings of Skinamarink. But because this is a movie review and not like an analysis, I will refrain from talking in length of some of my own opinions and theories. But I would like to cover some of the pieces of media that Skinamarink has used in order to like inspire its narrative. Two specifically, which are the fairy tale Hansel and Gretel and the Max Fleischer cartoon Bimbo's Initiation. So the very first time I went into going and watching Skinamarink, I had already known or heard that it's loosely based off of a fairy tale. And when I first watched it, I did just try to figure it out myself. As I've mentioned before, I studied fairy tales a little bit, not extensively, but a little. And I do really like talking about fairy tales in relation to horror. So of course, like, yeah, I want to figure out what fairy tale it was. I couldn't figure it out on my own though. Luckily, in an interview with Jezebel, Ball did state what fairy tale it's loosely based after, and that is Hansel and Gretel. And I do see it, so let me try to explain some of the ways that these two narratives relate to each other. First of all, the mother figure is a very prominent part of both narratives. Yes, I know Hansel and Gretel, it's like the stepmother, but a stepmother is still a mother figure, so And honestly, if I were to explain this further, I would be going into spoiler territory, but let me just leave you saying that in Hansel and Gretel, we can consider the witch in the gingerbread cabin and the stepmother to represent the same person. So do with that what you will with what you know about Skinamarink. If you've seen it, that is, I guess. If you don't, then I guess that is all the more reason to watch it. But also in the original Hansel and Gretel fairy tale, they find themselves lost in a dark wood, trying to find their way back home or to civilization. Because I know in some versions, they're just like trying to escape their home and then they get lost. But their trail disappears and they have no way to care for themselves in the lost woods. That is until they come across the gingerbread cabin or gingerbread house, whatever. What gingerbread cottage is what I have written. In Skinamarink, Kevin and Kaylee's once beloved and familiar home turns into that dark forest. And I think the stairwell and the upstairs hall are meant to represent the path up to the gingerbread cottage, where the witch or the entity in this case resides. The only difference here is that Hansel and Gretel get a happy ending, and as you can probably tell from how I've I've cited this as being a kind of sad story. Kevin and Kaylee's ending is not so happy. As somebody who really loves like talking about and studying fairy tales and seeing the ways that fairy tales get reinvented, reimagined, or constructed in a modern way, I love to see what people do with like a general fairy tale idea. And I really think that Skinamarink has a cool retelling or reimagining of the Hansel and Gretel story with a very tragic ending. But honestly, I'm more so impressed by the choice and the use of old cartoons throughout the film, and also how they both foreshadow and explain events that are happening or going to happen. I don't think any of the cartoon choices in Skinamarink are an accident. I think they are very specifically chosen for what the cartoon is depicting, or even what happens in the cartoon. And in fact, I feel like you could do an entire video on the cartoons and Skinamarink just in general. But some of the examples of this include obviously the disappearing rabbit. That's like the most in-your-face example. But there's also a moment where a spider is catching something in its web, and that's relating to a moment that happens, I believe, between Kaylee and the mother, or perhaps just between the entity and children in general. But I'm really more interested in the inclusion of the cartoon Bimbo's Initiation. Now, what's kind of funny about Bimbo's Initiation within Skinamarink is that we don't see it a whole lot. Keep that in mind. We don't see Bimbo's Initiation a whole lot. It shows one clip, and then there's one other moment where where you can hear audio from it.
Be a member.
Yes.
Wanna be a member?
Yes.
So Bimbo's Initiation, maybe if the title doesn't sound familiar to you, some of the clips will, because this cartoon has made many rounds on the internet for its scary and disturbing cartoony imagery. But if you are completely unfamiliar with this, or if you're only familiar with it in those like, ooh, so creepy posts, Bimbo's Initiation is a cartoon by Max Fleischer, who is the creator of Betty Boop, and it follows Boop's boyfriend Bimbo as he goes through an underground house of horrors and danger. During his torturous journey, a secret unknown society repeatedly attempts scaring him to join them until he finally gives in. And on Bimbo's journey, he experiences many things, which include but are not limited to endless hallways, fake doorways, entrapment, rooms turning upside down, vanishing objects, and a refusal to join or give in to a torturer. If you have seen Skinamarink, all of these events might sound similar to you, because all of these events are what happens in Skinamarink. Bimbo's journey is very parallel to Kevin's journey in the film. All of what Bimbo experiences on his journey are the same experiences that Kevin has on his journey through this endless night. Editor Rachel here. It is also very important what scenes are placed in regards to what has just happened in the narrative. I highly recommend watching Bimbo's Initiation with Skinamarink as context. Does that make sense? Go watch Skinamarink and then go watch Bimbo's Initiation and then re-watch the scene that has Bimbo's Initiation and Skinamarink and get back to me in the comments. I mean, it's almost identical what is happening between Bimbo and Kevin. It can't be a coincidence that Ball has chosen Bimbo's initiation to have in this film. But I think it is funny that it's like, it could have been leaned into more because it's so parallel with what's actually happening in Skinamarink. But it's just that one clip. And I don't know, did I discover something? The narcissist in me, did I discover something? I haven't watched a whole lot of other Skinamarink videos, so I don't know how much other people have talked about Bimbo's initiation. But I do think that it's not a coincidence that everything happening to Bimbo in that cartoon is also everything that's happening to Kevin throughout Skinamarink. Bimbo's initiation is Skinamarink. And I don't really know where to go further with that, but it is something that I have noticed and something that I find very interesting. I wish I could ask Ball about that. If like, I'm sorry, there's so many parallels. There's no way that it's not on purpose. That's what I'm trying to say. Like, those of you who have seen Skinamarink, go watch Bimbo's initiation. It's in its entirety. It's interesting. It's cool also. I really like it. But what more do I do with this other than just noticing the parallels, you know? But anyway, I wanted to note that. Overall, Skinamarink is one of those films that it's primarily for the cinephiles. And it's for the media analysts who are just going to be foaming at the mouth, breaking down the deeper meaning, some of the symbolism and metaphors that Skinamarink has going on. But not only that, I think it's for people who see film as more of like an art form rather than solely a form of entertainment. And if you see film as art, and if you enjoy art films, I suppose, you would probably really enjoy and appreciate what Kyle Edward Ball is doing in Skinamarink. I think it's fantastic. He's like perfect. It's, like I said, it feels like he has put a little camera in a retina and it just, I don't know, it records like how you actually see things in the dark. It could be something that's simple and I'm stupid, but I'm impressed by it. And I'm also just impressed by his world building and his atmosphere building. I mean, there's so many little details that go into Skinamarink to make it feel unsettling. And while it is a very slow-paced film, I think it has a huge payoff. The finale of the film, I think it's a big payoff if you're willing to sit through those very slow moments. I mean, there is a reveal right at the end, not right at the end, but towards the end, that every time I see it, it still, I won't say like shocks me, but I'm just like, damn, that's fucking crazy. But as I said before, Skinamarink isn't for everybody. I don't think like a general horror audience is going to be wowed by this. I don't think a mainstream audience is going to be like impressed by it. I think there are a lot of like mainstream audiences that are going to think this is incredibly boring and not scary in the slightest. And I think those points are fair and I see where they're coming from. But if you're somebody who likes artistic films or experimental films, I think there's going to be a whole lot to appreciate about Skinamarink. And this artistic experimental stuff, it's going to be a negative for some people, but those are the very same things that are going to make it a positive for others. I personally really love Skinamarink. I love it more than when I first reviewed this, when I thought that it wasn't scary. And then I experienced a very late night that reminded me of the film, and I do think it is genuinely terrifying because it feeds on that innocent fear that you had during childhood. And again, Kyle Ball is just incredible at building the atmosphere of this film. And I'm going to say it one more time. I highly recommend watching this film, total darkness, with headphones on. Be completely immersed in this and you will understand why people find it terrifying. But what tier am I going to end up giving Skinamarink? When I did it on my blog, I was doing a like 5-star system. Instead of stars, they were called coffins. And I gave it a 3.5 out of 5 coffins. I do think it is raised now, and of course I'm going to be using my letter tiers now. I genuinely think it's scary. It feeds upon some of our like most core fears, and I think it's also just like very well executed. And for that, Skinamarink is going to be receiving the A tier. I wouldn't exactly say S because I understand why people might fall asleep. I fell asleep watching it. I get it. It's hard not to when it's so quiet and so peaceful and so dark and soothing, even though it's also terrifying. But it is getting an A tier. I think it is just like an incredibly well shot film. It's beautiful to look at. It's very uneasy and uncomfortable. And as I said, the narrative goes to some somewhat unexpected, dark, and sadistic places. And also thank you so much to Jose Luis here. Thank you so much to Jose for recommending this film to me. I know I've already seen it, but I wanted to include it in the list because we have talked about it in the comments quite a few times, and I kept saying, yeah, I'm gonna review it. So I hope you enjoyed this review, and thank you so much for being a supporter on the channel, and yeah. And with that, we are done with yet another movie review. Thank you guys so much if you stuck around all the way until the very end. If you like this review, please make sure that you stab that like button. It is a free and easy way to help support this channel, and I appreciate it so much. If there is a scary movie that you would like to see my opinion on, put it in the comments down below and maybe you will see it show up on the channel in the future. Also, if you just like this video so much that you want to hear me ramble about more horror movies, I cover B movies, bad movies, obscure movies, disturbing cinema, sometimes even now and then a blockbuster or two. Again, I am planning to cover the Carpenter's Son when it comes out. Looking forward to that. One of the other newer films that I also plan to do once it comes out is Five Nights at Freddy's 2. So, if you would like to see me ramble about more horror, please consider hitting that subscribe button and the bell icon so you can be notified every time I make a new upload. New uploads are every Friday at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and my socials are on the screen as well if you so wish to follow me somewhere, but not in real life. And just one final thank you so much to everyone who stuck around until the very end. Our time here is precious. We really don't have a whole lot of it, and the fact that you have used your time to sit here and listen to me ramble about all the things I love about this weird experimental artistic film, thank you. I really appreciate it. I really appreciate you and your presence and the time that you have spent to watch this video. It means a whole lot to me. Thank you for you and your time. If I do not see you in any kind of post, then I will see you in next week's video. But until then, please have a great night and stay safe out there.
Love you. Love you too.